It's Father's Day again, and I'm making my dad a chocolate cake. Today I'm making something a little more elaborate. It's a Black Forrest Cake. To start off, you want to whisk together your dry ingredients. I have 2/3 of a cup of cake flour in this bowl. It's already sifted. And to that, add 1/3 of a cup of unsweetened Dutch processed cocoa powder. Everything needs to be sifted because you're making a genoise that's made with beaten eggs. So you want everything really fine. Don't risk having any lumps. Then add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and whisk that together. Then what you want to do to start off this cake is whisk your sugar and eggs together until they're warm. So here I have 2/3 of a cup of sugar. This is a pot of simmering water. And then add 4 whole eggs plus 3 egg yolks to your sugar. And then you want to whisk everything until the sugar dissolves and the egg mixture is warm. This will allow the mixture to get really light and fluffy once you put it onto the mixer and start whisking. The warmer the eggs are, the more volume you're going to get. But you have to be very careful when it's sitting on top of hot water that the eggs don't begin to cook on the sides of the pot. So keep whisking. You want to whisk and whisk until your sugar is dissolved and the mixture is hot. And honestly, the only way that you can tell if that's happened is by sticking your finger in it, and then your finger's all sticky. But there's really no way around it. Good enough. Off. Then transfer everything to your mixer. You can do this with a handheld, but it'll take quite a bit longer. You really need to get a lot of volume here. All the leavening is coming from the eggs, so you want to make sure that it gets nice and light and fluffy. It'll like double in volume. You'll see what I mean. So you can see it's pale and thick now, which is what you're looking for. It takes about 2 minutes on medium and then about 4 minutes on high. And then you can fold your dry ingredients in. You want to sift the dry ingredients over the top of the bowl. This is many times sifted, but well, it has egg yolks in it, so it's not nearly that light, but still light. Now, you want to fold it almost, but not completely in because you have to add some butter to this mixture. So make sure you have your butter on hand. It's 5 tablespoons of melted butter. Take about 1 cup of the cake batter and sort of fold/stir it into the butter. You need to get the butter incorporated into the cake batter, and this is a great way of doing it without losing too much volume. Then it can go back in, and then fold that in. And that's your cake batter. Have your oven preheating to 400 degrees and then have 2 parchment-lined, buttered and floured 9 by 2 inch cake pans. Divide the batter evenly between the pans and then get them into the oven. They need to bake until they're springy to the touch and they just start pulling away from the sides of the pans. Believe it or not, that'll only take about 10 or 11 minutes. Okay, so these have cooled. I took them out of the pan, let them cool on racks, top side up. To assemble the cake, you're gonna need a couple of things, the first of which is a ganache. I have 6 ounces of chocolate that I've chopped and 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream that is just now coming to a simmer. Pour your hot cream right over the chocolate. Ganache is really just a very fancy word for melted chocolate and cream. Now you know. To this, we're also going to add 1 tablespoon of corn syrup. That makes it just a little bit shinier when it sets, which is what you want because this is going to be a beautiful glaze on top of your cake. Let it sit there for 5 minutes for the chocolate to melt, and then you whisk it together. To get the berries nice and glazy, you're going to mix them with some jelly. This is 1/3 of a cup of blackcurrant jelly, but you can use blackberry, any kind of dark berry jelly you want, with just a little bit of lemon juice, about a teaspoon. Whisk it until it loosens. This is 4 cups of blackberries. Black Forest Cake is normally made with cherries, and you could definitely use that. It's certainly seasonal. Just replace the blackberries with sweet cherries, pitted. Toss gently, actually, to coat your berries in the jelly mixture, and you can see that they get nice and shiny. And then one last thing was I made a simple syrup to brush over my cakes. This is made with 1/3 of a cup of creme de cassis. You could use kirsch if you wanted, 1/3 of a cup of sugar, and 3 tablespoons of water. The ganache should be ready to stir. Once the chocolate has been sitting in the hot cream, it should come together really nicely into a glaze. Listen, there's a few components to this cake, which makes it a little bit more complex, but it also makes it more special. So that's why it's great for a special occasion like Father's Day to say how much you love your dad. You want to brush your cakes really generously with the syrup. Genoise has a tendency to be just a little bit dry, which allows it to absorb the syrup. If you're not nice and generous with your syrup, your cake can come out a little bit dry, and you don't want that. I'm doing one top side up and one bottom side up. The recipes usually say brush, but I like to call this soaking, and that way people have a better idea of what I mean when I say really saturate the cake. And I like to go so far as to do the sides of the cake as well. And if you want to, the layer that's going to be on the top, you can brush the bottom and the top. The one that's on the bottom, you really can't, otherwise it'll stick to your cake stand. I'm going to do a layer of ganache on the bottom layer as well as over the top. So put some ganache on the bottom. Spread it out so it goes all the way to the edges. And if a little bit drips down the sides, no problem. Then use about 3 cups of your berries to cover the top of your cake. You want to save about a cup to garnish the top with, so don't use them all up. And even if you're making this today for tomorrow, which is totally fantastic, these berries will be great tomorrow. So you can mix everything all together today and then just top off your cake when you're ready to serve it. Get your cake fully covered with a layer of berries. These are blackberries, which are really big. So a single layer of berries is plenty to cover this cake. Now some whipped cream. This is 3/4 cup of cream whipped with 3 tablespoons of confectioner's sugar. So just a very lightly sweetened whipped cream. Now you want to get this over all those berries. So you want it kind of stiff enough to hold its shape, but not too much. Spread your cream over the top, then top with your top cake layer, and then pour the remaining ganache over the top. This is a make-ahead situation because this needs to sit in the refrigerator for about 4 hours and up to overnight. It, in fact, gets better as it sits, so feel free to make it ahead. Spread the ganache over the top, and this time you definitely want it dripping down the sides. So let it drip down the sides and get a nice covering of ganache. If your ganache has set up a little bit while you're making your cake, you can just throw it in the microwave for a few seconds to loosen it up. You want to make sure that it spreads and sort of drips nicely down the sides of the cake. Get this in the fridge for about 4 hours and up to overnight. 4 hours later, or overnight, ready to serve. Spoon the remaining berries on top. It's about a cup. And like I said, any berries would work here. Beautiful and ready to serve. I don't know, I don't even want to cut into it, it's so beautiful. I'll just eat a delicious berry and say, Happy Father's Day, Dad, I love you.